Abortion is arguably the most hotly debated social and moral issue since the 1970s and Roe v. Wade. Two main arguments surround the issue of abortion. The primary one used by those in the pro-choice camp is that abortion is the woman's right to bodily sovereignty. The main point used by those who oppose abortion is the claim that we become people at the moment of egg fertilization. Let us first lay down some axioms upon which I can hope to build some reasonable arguments, and then let's examine two things: personhood and the mother-child moral dynamic. So our temporary axioms. 1. It is immoral to end a healthy, innocent person's life against their will or without their sober consent. 2. People have a right to live. 3. People have bodily sovereignty. Let us also make an assumption that the fetus in question comes about due to consensual sex, which the mother understands potentially causes pregnancy. Entirely different conversations arise when we talk about pregnancies due to rape and the rape of those who are unconscious or unwise to the process of procreation. Let us first delve into personhood. What it means to be a person is also hotly contested, as it is used on both sides of the argument in their favor. Allow me to make a few propositions about what it means to be a person. 1. The ability to reason and rationalize. 2. Experiential possibility, which is to say, the ability to witness something and react to it in some fashion, even if only mentally. 3. Emotion. And 4. To be alive, which is to say, to have bodily functions such as a heartbeat, a functioning brain, etc. If all of these are necessary to be a person, then there exist many old people who are not people, as they lack one or more of these characteristics to varying degrees as their faculties slowly leave them. If it is acceptable to terminate a pregnancy purely because that entity is not a person, then it follows that the euthanizing of our senile grandparents is also acceptable. If an objection is made to this, then a distinction must be made between the fetus and the old person, or an alternate justification must be given for that fetus's termination. Personally, I am inclined to believe old, senile people are still people. Furthermore, if the claimed difference between a fetus and an old person is the fact that one has been obviously conscious of the natural world, then what of those people who have been born with the most severe mental handicaps and their consciousness of the world cannot be seen or observed? Is it then morally acceptable to euthanize them as well? As we can see, any posited definition for personhood will be fraught with contention, and it seems any criterion used to question a fetus's personhood will also apply to some of the elderly and senile. It would be easy to simply claim that a fetus is either a person or it isn't, which is to say, it's either a person from the moment of fertilization or it becomes one at some point. But let's take the more arduous road and say a fetus is not a person immediately upon conception, but becomes one at some point prior to birth. So let's assume we can quantifiably distinguish between any 2 days in embryonic development. So on any day, we can count the number of cells, determine structure and presence of brain waves, including the moment they come about, as well as those immediately prior, which is to say accurately predict their emergence, and determine at what point, with complete certainty, a fetus is viable outside the womb. Let us also say these stages vary for every woman, but for every woman these accurate observations can be made. But all of this fetal observation is fruitless if we still lack a good definition of personhood and a pro-choice stance which depends upon that definition, both of which are currently the case. Even still, let us take it further. Suppose a pro-choice argument relies not upon when or whether a fetus is or becomes a person, but upon a particular biological emergence, like the existence of brain waves, a heartbeat, or distinguishable organs. Then it would seem those on the pro-choice side are defenseless to counter it, but it does seem like a poor argument, as it may lead to some unfavorable logical consequences. As I was unable to make a strong biological or psychological distinction between a fetus and an old, senile person, let me claim now that a fetus is a person. If that is the case, then, as all other people, a fetus has a right to life as laid down in our axioms. It would then be immoral to terminate it. This, however, seems to be at odds with the mother's bodily sovereignty. This raises another question. Is the fetus a part of the mother's body? It is certainly within her body, and obviously relies upon it. Most, myself included, would say yes, their bodies are part of each other. So now we reach an impasse. Two beings whose rights are conflicting. To whom do we grant their full rights, and whose do we reduce? If we preserve the mother's bodily sovereignty, why? It feels like low-hanging fruit to say she invited the possibility of pregnancy by having sex, and therefore has given up that right. As an aside, the only other people whose axiomatic rights are reduced are people who commit crimes worthy of capital punishment, the death sentence. And creating a life is literally and metaphorically the opposite of taking one. But why reduce the fetuses, if it did not ask to be created and has done nothing wrong? It is a hard question to answer, obviously, as no one has really done it successfully without logical fallacies and an appeal to religious authority. In conclusion, and based on the axioms laid out, a fetus likely either is or is not a person, which is to say, it probably does not become one at some point in its development. If one believes a fetus to be a person as defined by the given definition, then abortion is obviously immoral. If one does not believe a fetus to be a person as defined previously, then one must find an alternate definition for personhood, or otherwise find a considerable biological or psychological difference between the fetus and the old, senile person, or otherwise concede that euthanizing old people is also morally permissible. Until I see a better definition for personhood, I am going to personally err in the favor of the fetus as a person. Thank you for listening. I hope it was, at the very least, thought-provoking.